Hey, it's Don Skaggs again with Empowered Inventing, the one place where we try to help you change your behaviors, and because we know that if you can act like a successful inventor or entrepreneur, guess what? Then you'll be doing those things that they do and not the things that the unsuccessful inventors, the ones that hit the roadblocks, that have the trouble, that end up quitting or it not working out for them. You'll less likely be like them, and you'll more likely be like the ones that are successful. Now today, I want to talk to you about 3 things that you don't have to have right away when you come up with a new idea for a business, product, or startup. And these are things that they're nice to have, they're good to have, they're things that you might have eventually need to have. But they're not necessary at the beginning, and they can actually trip you up at the beginning. And the first one of these is a full-blown patent. And I told this story, I kind of gave a little of this away in I think the last video that I did. And that was, I talked to this startup team a while back, and I can't believe the advice that they told me they were given by their attorney. They said, well, Don, we'd love to talk to you about our idea, but our attorney told us not to talk about this at all until we get our patent issued. And a patent, and if you're not familiar with how that works, a patent, you file provisional, which we recommend doing first, and doing, in a lean way, if you possibly can. There's lots of different strategies for that we teach. But then you file, and that gives you 1 year to find out whether you have a market, and then you, at that end of that 1 year, then you file for what's called the non-provisional, the big enchilada, the big patent, the one that usually costs a good bit more money. And so this attorney not only was having them file for their non-provisional, but he said, oh no, you need to wait until the patent gets issued. Well, that could be 3 years. That could be more than 3 years sometimes. And when you file for even your provisional patent at the beginning, you could step patent pending on there. You are protected. That whole year sitting on your hands is crazy. It's extraordinarily bad advice that they were given. And I can't believe anybody would tell them this, because if you're sitting on your hands, that whole 1 year of even the provisional patent exists for you to find out one thing: do I have a market? You can't know if you have a market until you go out, and you can't hide it under a bushel. You can't hide it under a bushel basket. You can't hide it away and say, I can't show it to anybody. You have to get out there and see if it's going to be a viable product. And let me ask you this: would you want to spend $10,000 on a full-blown patent, and then only after it gets issued, or after you pay that money, find out that it's worthless? Because patent doesn't mean it's a millionaire. It never does. It only gives you protection. It only gives you the ability to sue somebody, to pay to sue somebody, if someone infringed. And so it's a very small piece of the big thing. You don't need to have a full-blown patent right away. Now there's tons of ways that you can do it, and you can do it right. You do want to have some protection in place, and there's really, really, really cheap ways to do that. There's the provisional patent, like I was just talking about. Hold your foot in the door for a year. You can go pro se, which means doing it on your own, or you can do a pro se hybrid, which is a lot of times what we talk about. You write it, then you get someone to vet it for you. So there's lots of ways to do this, where you don't have to spend a bunch of money before you go to market, or just right when you're getting started. There's cheap ways. So while you're vetting that market, while you're saying, okay, is this going to be something that's going to make me money, or is this just going to be a hole I throw money down? Now, another thing you don't have to have right away, and again, I'll see inventors do this, I'll see entrepreneurs do this, and that's a warehouse full of product. I mean, the mold cost alone can wipe you out. If you need molds for a part of your product, or your product is a molded product, or maybe even several molds, the mold cost can wipe you out. Molds are very expensive. There's too many people I see with product that ends up rotting in the garages, rotting in some storage building somewhere. Why? because they did not vet their product first. They did not check out their market first. They spent too much money on the wrong things way too early. There's lots of ways you can get around having to buy a warehouse full of product to see whether you're really going to have customers or not. There's components off the shelf, and there are work-around ways to make that happen where it looks good, it looks nice. There's in-house assemblers, there's freelancers out there, there's 100 different ways you can do this depending on what it is and what the product is. So don't do that. You don't wind up with a warehouse full of the wrong product, or a product maybe you needed to pivot on, or where you had to change just one thing and you've got all of the wrong product in a warehouse that's just going to sit there that you spent thousands of dollars on. Something you do not need on step one, on day one. Do not do that. Another item that you don't need right away is a big, expensive, so-called marketing report. And again, I've seen this. There's a lot of scam companies out there that'll sell you a 3-ring binder full of what I call Google searches that really aren't worth anything. And the industry statistics will tell us, they're out there. They'll say that the average novice inventor will spend between $10,000 and $15,000 on services that are almost worthless. They're just enough to be legal, but in the marketplace, because you know, it's one thing to see these statistics in black and white, but it's another thing to watch the faces of the people come through my door at the Inventors Network Kentucky, and they've got these 3-ring binders, and they look at me and they say, "Don, isn't this worth something?" And I have to say, "I'm sorry. This has no bearing in the marketplace. It has no real bearing. It's not going to help you get to step 2. So it's something you don't need. It has no bearing on your idea's worth in any given market, really, I think. Nothing replaces real customer responses, and that's why I think the market, even the so-called legitimate marketing reports out there, I wouldn't pay for one, because nothing replaces real customer responses, and nothing replaces your involvement in that. You're going to see how they respond. You're going to see what the nuances are. Or do I need to just change a little thing, or do I need to change something big? Do I need to just kind of scrap this whole idea and move on to something different? Or do I need to change this just to a certain degree? So nothing replaces that. So don't spend a bunch of money on some marketing report, or you know, anything big like that in the beginning. There's lots of cheap ways you can do this to get started. Now the good news is that you don't need all this stuff to get started. That's actually a good thing. If you don't spend a lot of money on all this stuff, guess what? You'll have money to buy the right things, to do the right things, to be lean about it, and actually make money in the end. You can do this with your involvement, but you've got to be totally immersed in it. Total immersion is a huge deal with this. You've got to get eyeball deep in all this. You can also do it at a low cost. You can bootstrap this. I've bootstrapped my own companies. I've seen it done well, and I know that if you do it right, you can do it too. So anyway, I hope all this is helpful. Again, I'm Don Skaggs. This is Empowered Inventing. Please check out our website, empoweredinventing.com, and I will look to see you at our next meeting, workshop, maybe one of our online classes, or on the next video.